Good evening. I cannot tell you how pleased I am to be here tonight. I am very emotional, and you bear with me. I hope I get through this evening. I am so pleased to be a recipient of the Volunteer Spirit of America Award. I want to share with you some of my story because I feel that my story is your story and reflective of your efforts. I want to tell you of a time long ago, in the 1950s, when my firstborn daughter was not thriving and was beset by wheezing and chronic cough. She was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, a relatively rare disease with a life expectancy we were advised of 3 to 5 years. Trying to cope with this startling revelation. In 1954, we sought out a few other known parents of CF children. And I am reminding here, if you will, to tell you a little anecdote of a little boy on the beach who, after a storm, was walking and saw the myriad of sea urchins or some such that had been washed up on the sands. And one by one, he was picking them up and bringing them back to the waters. And a passerby stopped him and said, "Son, why are you doing that? Don't you see it can't make a difference?" And the little boy, with creature in hand, looked up and said, "Well, sir, I think it will be pretty good for this one." From those early meetings in 1954 of this small band of parents came the groundwork, the constitutional framework for the not-for-profit organization chartered in 1955 as the National Cystic Fibrosis Research Foundation, later changed to the CFF, the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And we, as a small group of parents, banding together, armed with nothing but youth and a fierce determination, we set out to save our young. At that time in the early years, cystic fibrosis was not a paragraph nor a line in any medical text, and our first priority was education. Education of the medical profession, education of the lay public, and we worked feverishly, enlisting families, friends, relatives, and a slowly growing cohort of citizens concerned. And long before the internet and cell phones, we enlisted the support of the broadcast and the print media. And when no was just the beginning of a conversation, we mounted any manner and kind of special events and education programs to increase the visibility and to create a climate for support and care. And our campaign slogan then was, "Time is running out." In 1957, as you have heard, I stood before a convention of Delta Phi Epsilon, my undergraduate sorority, and I petitioned my sisters to help, to aid in this crusade against this insidious genetic disease, cystic fibrosis. And how proud was I, a short time later, to stand with the then international president, Rita Rosner, and the first president of the National Cystic Fibrosis Research Foundation, Robert Bob Natal, in accepting the pledge of the Delta Phi Epsilon to adopt CF as their national philanthropy in advocacy and fundraising, which has taken place through these 58 years. Many of those sorors, my sisters, worked with me through the years on the chapter boards, and several of them are still my cherished friends. Working nonstop, I served then in many capacities, as you heard, as a chapter president, as a regional council president, as a member of the Board of Trustees, but always with the magnificent aid of my supportive husband and a concerned, dedicated chapter volunteer board. And the campaign slogan then started to become, "Where there's help, there's hope." In the early 1960s and 70s, pursuing the research, care, and education agenda, we inaugurated a 4-year intense lobbying effort to try to get cystic fibrosis included in the state aid Crippled Children's Program and Title 19 Medicare Act. And fortunately, thankfully, with volunteer assistance, after 4 years, cystic fibrosis was able to have that state financial aid. It has been a long journey. In those years, 1960 to 1970, CF centers were formed throughout the country, and the diagnosis and lifespan became to be a little bit more assured. It was an easier situation to get a child diagnosed and to get some manner and kind of treatment. Volunteerism was proliferating throughout the country. And our chapter slogan, our campaign slogan, began to be, "Give the breath of life, but not yet in time for many." In her freshman year at college, my daughter Stephanie lost her battle with cystic fibrosis. Scant solace that at 19 years, she had outlived the CF life median expectancy of 10 years of age. Devastated, I cut back, maintaining position on the board, but not as fully involved after a few years, driven by the relentless imperative to validate what I perceived at my daughter's legacy. I once again became fully engaged. And in 1983, as founding president of the newly reconstituted CF Association of Greater New York, with resuming our signature fundraising events, incorporating business and corporate and junior committee with emphasis on medical grants and care program, answering in 1987 to the needs of an emerging population, we were privileged to institute the nation's first scholarship CF Young Adult Career Awards program. And that program was enthusiastically received and elicited much favorable response. And I remember a doctor's call who told us of her patient, a young man who was in hospital who had just received the award. And when he heard, tears welled up in his eyes and he started sobbing. And the doctor said to him, "Why are you crying? You're going to get an assist in your future." And the young man tearfully replied that he was gratified, but so moved that somebody out there really thought that he had a future. In the ensuing years, we concentrated, of course, always pushing forward with research, care, and education agenda. The Foundation's medical initiatives were bringing great changes in the quality of life of CF children with new medicines, transformative treatments, with enhanced airway clearance technique. Lifespan now had risen to 30 years of age, and the control and cure was just visible on the horizon. And so, after 50 years of effort, in 2004, I retired. Several years ago, I had the privilege of attending a Delta Phi Epsilon convention, and I thank them once again for their advocacy, for their fundraising, for their sisterly support of an effort that has come a very long way. And they are today still advocating on more than 103 campuses throughout our country. In speaking with them and addressing them, I shared with them my guiding mantra: no matter how long the night, the day is sure to come. And so we stand now on the dawn of that new day, on the cusp of a morrow without cystic fibrosis. My daughter Stephanie's favorite poetess was Emily Dickinson, who wrote, "Hope is a thing with courage that perches in the soul and sings a tune without the words and never stops at all." I am privileged this night to accept your volunteer Spirit of America Award, but I am honored to stand with you because I know that my story is your story and that we together will have put the words to Hope's song, and I thank you.